when we apply our truth seeking to the world, we know we usually cannot find out whether a certain thing is true. What we typically do is we take the state vector of the universe, separate it into separate objects that interact with each other, so interfaces. And this distinction that we are making is not completely arbitrary. It's done to optimize the compression that we can apply to our models of the universe. So we can predict what's happening with our limited resources. In this sense, it's not arbitrary. But the separation of the world into objects that are somehow discrete and interacting with each other is not the true reality, right? The boundaries between the objects are projected into the world, not arbitrarily projected, but still, it's only an approximation of what's actually the case. And we sometimes notice that we run into contradictions when we try to understand high-level things like economic aspects of the world and so on, or political aspects or psychological aspects, where we make simplifications, and the objects that we are using to separate the world are just one of many possible projections of what's going on. And so it's not, in this postmodernist sense, completely arbitrary, and you're free to pick what you want or dismiss what you don't like because it's all stories. No, that's not true. You have to show for every model of how well it predicts the world. So the confidence that you should have in the entities of your models should correspond to the evidence that you have.
Can I ask you on a small tangent to talk about your favorite set of ideas and people, which is postmodernism?
What? Postmodernism is something that I'm really not an expert on. And postmodernism is a set of philosophical ideas that is difficult to lump together, that is characterized by some useful thinkers, some of them post-structuralist and so on. And I'm mostly not interested in it because I think that it's not leading me anywhere that I find particularly useful. It's mostly, I think, born out of the insight that the ontologies that we impose on the world are not literally true, and that we can often get to a different interpretation by the world by using a different ontology that is different separation of the world into interacting objects. But the idea that this makes the world a set of stories that are arbitrary, I think, is wrong. And the people that are engaging in this type of philosophy are working in an area that I largely don't find productive. There's nothing useful coming out of this. So this idea that truth is relative is not something that has in some sense informed physics or theory of relativity. And there is no feedback between those. There is no meaningful influence of this type of philosophy on the sciences or on engineering or on politics. But there is a very strong information on ideology. Because it basically has become an ideology that is justifying itself by the notion that truth is a relative concept. And it's not being used in such a way that the philosophers or sociologists that take up these ideas say, I should doubt my own ideas because maybe my separation of the world into objects is not completely valid, and I should maybe use a different one and be open to a pluralism of ideas. But it mostly exists to dismiss the ideas of other people.
It becomes a political weapon of sorts to achieve power.
Basically, this there's nothing wrong, I think, with developing a philosophy around this, but to develop norms around the idea that truth is something that is completely negotiable is incompatible with the scientific project. And I think if the academia has no defense against the ideological parts of the postmodernist movement, it's doomed.